Stace appeared in Newcastle court this morning on charges of conspiracy to supply heroin, but police allege he was just one part of a major drugs ring operating throughout the Central Coast, which turned over $90,000 a week. 5 other people appeared at Wyong Court this morning on similar charges. They included 54-year-old Donald Kelly, his wife Pauline and their 15-year-old daughter. 2 other people, a son-in-law, Shane Jenkins of Yarramalong and Julian Hodges of Noraville, also appeared. Police say the arrests follow long-term external and electronic surveillance by Joint Drug Squad detectives. Police allege a raid on this home at Noraville uncovered 21 grams of heroin as well as hashish and cannabis. They say a similar raid uncovered another 5 grams of heroin and over 30 Indian hemp plants. Julian Hodge and Donald Kelly have been remanded in custody while Mrs Kelly and her daughter have been granted conditional bail. All will reappear at Wyong Court on December 18.
Hunter Vineyards were quick in their condemnation of the policy, saying the industry is already heavily taxed and could not survive even greater impositions. While the Hunter doesn't produce cask wines, the area's major port maker is Reg Drayton, who's also an executive of the Hunter Vineyard Association. Mr Drayton makes 100,000 litres of port annually and says lifting the sales tax on it from 20 to 30% of retail price would severely affect his company. He questioned whether the move is simply to cut back on alcoholism or is it to raise even more government revenue from the wine industry. Mr Drayton said it's already doing its part to create sensible wine consumption, prompting people to consume alcohol only in moderation and for enjoyment. Another prominent Hunter Vineyard, Murray Tyrrell, said he doubted the government could or would limit the tax increase to just cask and flagon sales. Mr Tyrrell said this would have a disastrous effect on his industry, particularly where bottle sales to the tourism trade are concerned. And the president of the Hunter Vineyard Association, Chris Barnes, also rejects the policy, saying its views on alcohol consumption are based on erroneous information and are contradicted by overseas data.
NBN Board of Directors Chairman John Pesha and NBN Managing Director Joe Sweeney presented the $1,703,000 cheque to the university's Vice-Chancellor, Professor Keith Morgan. It's the biggest cheque ever received by the university, and Professor Morgan says the establishment of the Chair of Cancer Research will build on important work already underway at the Oncology Unit at the Mater Hospital. That unit was also established with funds from NBN Telethons and is now being further developed with villa hostel accommodation for patients and their families. In total, the Telethons have raised $5.5 million. Mr Pesha says the money raised attracts many calls for assistance.
We chose this project possibly largely because we had 2 great enthusiasts on our committee, Joe Sweeney and Kevin Perry, who have always been interested in doing something for the treatment of cancer and realised the need in Newcastle here to have our own facilities. And of course they've always been interested in research.
He believes there will be continual support for the needs of the community from NBN's new owners, Fulcrum Capital Corporation Limited. Professor Morgan says the telethon money will provide support for the cancer research professor, associated staff and research equipment. The professor should be appointed within a year and will examine how cells become cancerous and then grow and spread.
It means that we can continue to build on the strengths that already exist in cancer research in the university in a very spectacular and, I believe, successful way.
I understand it will in fact be the first such chair in Australia. Where then does this place Newcastle's work in the cancer treatment and research stakes in Australia?
Well, quite simply in the forefront. There is a direct relationship between successful research and successful treatment, and the bringing of the two together at Newcastle is a very important step forward.
Whereabouts will you be looking to fill the chair?
Oh, internationally. The important thing is to get the best person to do the job, and if necessary we shall go all around the world.
Meanwhile, at the Royal Newcastle Hospital, the university has established a facility for research into anti-cancer drugs. The research will be directed by Dr John Greigel and will involve collaboration between the Hunter Oncology Centre and the discipline of clinical pharmacology. The Kalakarinos Oncology Research Laboratory is in the David Madison building. Mrs Joyce Kalakarinos of Belmont North donated an undisclosed sum of money to establish the laboratory in memory of her late husband, Dr James Kalakarinos.
The move by Newcastle's 3 independent aldermen has been branded by many as a time-wasting exercise which has very little chance of achieving anything beyond a token protest. While aldermen voted to approve the budget estimate in principle, including the proposed 6.5% rate increase, the independents threw a spanner in the works by calling for a rescission of the motion. Under local government regulations, councillors must wait 24 hours before they can debate the rescission motion. Meanwhile, the independents say they aren't happy with many aspects of the budget, including substantial roadwork cuts and what they see as unpopular moves in the community service areas, such as public libraries, art galleries, swimming pools and parks and gardens. Even so, the rescission motion is likely to be trampled by sheer weight of numbers at a meeting tomorrow night. But the independents say they had the right to take the stand, even if it proves a hollow gesture. On a more positive note, Council has given approval, pending certain noise pollution requirements, to the construction of a caravan park on Newcastle Gas Company land in Hamilton. A report to Council said the project will not only meet their objective of providing a range of residential accommodation in the form of long-term caravan residents, but will also increase the city's attractiveness as a tourist destination. Although a large section of gasworks pipes and tanks will be removed from the site, the majority of existing buildings will remain as office and facilities blocks.
The McNaughton budget reflects a major shift of emphasis, with Council directing funds towards job creation and business opportunities. Liberal and independent aldermen claim this is at the expense of bread and butter council services. Alderman Ashley Saunders has questioned the spending of $650,000 on a community arts centre while cutting back on services in the existing Lehman Street Art Gallery. Independent Alderman John Tate is worried about the size of the deficit and the effect that will have on roadworks.
Well, it's really a budget to make things look good. It's a budget that's designed to make things look as though there'll be a lot of capital works next year. And I don't think that it's realistic to achieve that. So then one must ask, why have they framed such a budget? And why is such a budget being supported? And I think the only answer really is that it's designed to make the Labor Party look good as far as Newcastle is concerned for the forthcoming election, which is going to be early next year, as we know.
Well, for a start, there's not a huge deficit at all. There's a budget deficit, which we are quite well able to handle, and it's not relevant for the present discussions anyway. What I'm so annoyed about is the absolute waste of time of this motion. The purpose of the budget meetings is simply to strike a rate.
What's being sought here is to live beyond our means, and in fact it's being put to the community that can be done, and I really don't believe it can be done. I say it can't be done. In fact, there's talk already of the review in February, which is only, 8 or 10 weeks away, of redrafting things then. So really, this budget is a lot of pie in the sky.
Do you think the rescission motion is a fair move?
Oh, absolutely not. It's an absolute humbug. It's a waste of time, and it's something that could seriously damage the council. We're jammed up against a January 1 deadline to get all this fixed. We must put it on public exhibition for 10 days. We must consider what happens as a result of that public exhibition, and it's just putting the aldermen of the council and the officers of council about in a most ridiculous fashion.
Now in its 20th year, the top of the town motor inn isn't in prime condition. A critic might even say it looks a little shabby. But Mike Yazbek says that hasn't turned off potential buyers from across Australia. He says he's had about a dozen serious inquiries from business people who see the tourist opportunity, but none of these inquiries have been from locals. Newcastle business people have ignored the sale, prompting Mr Yazbek to accuse them of a lack of motivation. A member of the local tourist board, he says it's hard to whip up local enthusiasm.
I'm amazed that the response from Newcastle has been as few. I think the people have called for tenders have been from Queensland, country New South Wales, a lot from Sydney, Albury, Wagga and Victoria.
So why aren't Newcastle business people reacting the same way?
I think the people of Newcastle realise how wonderful the place that they live in, but oversight the opportunities that are here.
The board's new home was once the office and showroom for Eric Hardman Carpets in Denison Street. After the $300,000 purchase, the building has been refitted to offer upstairs office space. The ground floor will be used to house a government information centre. The board is 10 years old and is seeking new corporate sponsorship after being assured of $2 in state government support for every $1 it raises from the community. Chairman Alex Young says the board's key role is in improving two-way communication between governments and the region.
What we had to do in working at the creation of the Development Board is make sure that the region had the right approach to communication with government, and we therefore see ourselves as the link with a flow to and from government of government policy and regional desires, and we believe that's the most important role that we've played today.
After a brief inspection and the obligatory plaque presentation, the Premier was off to Cockle Creek, where CRA has just opened its Advanced Technical Development Centre. The new lab cost more than $3 million and will house 70 researchers and innovators. CRA uses this think tank to improve existing processes of extracting non-ferrous and precious metals. More than half the staff have second degrees. But unlike other research and development centres, this group is concentrating its developments on commercial applications. It's having success in finding better ways of refining metals, such as zinc, copper and lead, and is examining ways to best extract gold from difficult deposits. The Premier says the export potential of such research is in the added value it gives our natural resources.
Anything that we can do to develop new processes to create additional value to our resources rather than export them is going to be in the interest of our state and our nation.
The federal members for Charlton and Newcastle chose City Hall for a press conference to announce the final allocations, which have gone to the Fighter Display Centre at Williamtown, $500,000, the Regional Museum, $230,000, a Hexham Pelham Tourist Railway, $200,000, and the William IV project, $73,000. Two of them, the Fighter Display Centre and the Tourist Railway, have until March to establish planning structures. But Mr Morris said he's confident the guarantee of funds will stimulate that process. He pointed to the success of the RAF Open Day in November as an indication of how the base can attract people. Mr Morris said he sees the projects spawned by the grants as a new beginning for an area greatly affected by the decline of the steel industry.
I think in years to come, when people in Newcastle say, when did things start to change, the steel plan will be seen as being the departure point. It was a time when the Technology Centre was started and funded, when the Regional Museum was started and funded, when William IV was built, when the Air Force Display Centre goes ahead, and the range of other projects will provide the change in direction that the region, I think, has been looking for so long to broaden its economic base.
In a separate news release, the member for Charlton, Bob Brown, heralded a whole new era for the Maitland Coalfields area with the tourist steam railway from Hexham to Richmond Vale, Pellor-Bain, and one certain to meet with some local opposition, the township of Minmi.
And eventually we will have a rail link going from the Hexham Shortland wetlands through to the village of Minmai, which I'd like to see restored, through Stockrington to Richmond Main, the renovated, restored complex at Richmond Main, and then around to Pelham, where we'll break the seal eventually on that tunnel and allow people access, at least limited access, into the underground workings of Pelham Colliery.
Merewether Quarry lies on Hunter District Water Board land adjoining the planned Glenrock State Recreation Area. It's seen by Council and the Board as their only viable option for road gravel, providing a supply for decades to come. However, because of its sensitive location, Minister for Water Resources Janice Crosio has officially tabled a draft management plan inviting public comment on the future of the operation. For local government and the Water Board officials at the meeting, the quarry must continue operations, albeit under careful supervision with tree planting and 5-yearly reviews. But for resident groups committed to creating an uninterrupted coastal recreation reserve, the quarry must close. Mrs Crosio says the draft plan is a chance for informed debate.
I think really we're talking about how important the quarry is in its extractive material to the city of Newcastle and to the people of the Hunter Valley. Now, when we started handing over the Glenrock State Recreational Area, we knew as a board that the quarry would be on the boundary. I directed the board to immediately prepare a draft management plan so that people could understand and appreciate the problems we would have if we had to immediately close down the quarry.
But community groups say the quarry stands as graphic evidence of environmental vandalism.
I hope that every person in Newcastle will come out and have a look at this cancerous scar and say to the Minister, that is no good, we want that quarry rehabilitated, we want it closed, we want a state recreation area, we don't want a quarry.
The people of Newcastle have until February next year to make their submissions to the Hunter District Water Board. These young Japanese are part of a Goodwill tour organised by the Dairy Farmers Association of Japan. They're the second half of a total 100 young men and women who've travelled here to meet their Australian dairy industry counterparts and sample our lifestyle. Organisers make no bones about the social aspect of the tour, but they're disappointed rather than hurt by media claims that the whole show is a sex romp. They put it down to a cultural misunderstanding. Dairy farmers in Japan work long hours with few chances to socialise, and a drift of young women away from rural communities to the cities is creating a definite surplus of country bachelors. The Australian tour seemed a good way to create goodwill abroad and at home.
So we decided to young people's farms and to travel together and just to give to the opportunity to meet each other.
The tour includes sightseeing in Sydney, water sports, a campfire get-together and, of course, meetings with young Australians as well.
Secretary of the Newcastle sub-branch of the Transport Workers Union, Barry Joy, is one of the two off to Harvard University. He'll be accompanied by Bob Gowson, the General Secretary of the Australian Collieries Staff Association at Merewether. Are there very many people from Australia chosen to go and attend that course?
It varies from 1 to 4 each year. And at this stage I'm aware of 3 people have been chosen. to represent Australia.
Mr Joy applied to get into the Harvard Trade Union program through the New South Wales Labor Council. While in America, he'll study American industrial law, labour law, economics and business management. He'll spend 10 weeks at the university and will then tour American trade unions for 4 weeks.
The Madawi Christian Volunteers boast a following of 19 people who've been sharing 3 houses around Madawi for 6 months. Ranging in age from 14 to 43, the group has been pooling incomes, living off $35 a week. One member has a full-time job, the others distribute a fortnightly magazine and do voluntary community work, such as mowing lawns. But the Department of Social Security says you can't get unemployment benefits if your other activities stop you looking for work. Group founder Dave McKay says members do look for work, but see their other duties as coming first.
The department in Mayfield, or perhaps the department as a whole, it's not really clear yet, seems to be bothered by the fact that they're staying busy, that they're productive, that they're enthusiastic. They seem to want to maintain the image of dull bludgers.
Mr McKay is known to authorities. This incident at the Reserve Bank 3 years ago led to a conviction for being knowingly concerned with damage to Commonwealth notes. The new ship became a priority after the grounding of the Nella Dan on Macquarie Island some weeks ago. Scheduled to begin service in late 1989, the new vessel will be a better icebreaker capable of high-level marine research to give Australia a stronger role in Antarctic conservation. Carrington Slipways have been following the replacement project for 4 years, and they're about to complete talks with announced owner P&O. Carrington Slipways' only competitor is a Fremantle company, but Managing Director Don Laverick is confident.
We do have the best price and the most reliable delivery.
The long-term significance for the Hunter of closing this contract is the bearing it could have on the region's chances of winning the Australian Navy's frigate contract.
It's demonstrating Newcastle Hunter Valley skills and competence, and I think that will make us make our chances for the frigate much more viable, because we can demonstrate what we can do rather than trying to explain it.
The government bus drivers stopped work at 10 o'clock this morning and attended this meeting for 4 hours. This completely halted every government bus service in the Newcastle area. During the meeting, the drivers rejected a second-tier wage package presented to them by AT and MOEA State Secretary Drew Robertson. However, a new package was formulated at the meeting and was given to union officials for renegotiation. The bus drivers' vote will go to a stop-work meeting in Sydney on Monday. In the meantime, Newcastle bus drivers don't expect to hold any further stop-work meetings at this stage. Any further action will be considered in the new year after the new package has been presented. Meanwhile, during today's meeting, the drivers agreed to an interim arrangement to install 42-way radios in night buses. All Newcastle buses should be fitted with the safety devices by the middle of next year, giving bus drivers direct contact with the depot and the Transport Investigation Branch.